If you combine these 4 circles, you've got the bit in the middle, that is when the magic happens. And if any of those fails, then you haven't got yourself the deal. Let's talk about this Venn diagram scenario. If you're not familiar with a Venn diagram, it's where you have several circles and there's an overlapping bit in the middle, and you did this at school, you had no idea what it all meant. Now I'm going to give you the very practical application for it when it comes to buying a business. First element, the first circle if you like, let's see if I can draw this up here. So the first is what you want. So when you look at the business, what is it that you want to pay for it? What do you think it's worth? And this is a subject that people get really stuck on. You know, what is it worth to you? If you were to acquire a business that made you £100,000 a year, you're not going to go and say, oh my goodness, that business is worth 10 million. Oh, I'm going to pay 10 million pounds for a business making 100,000 a year. That's just crazy. And then you take a client like Dan, who paid 10 million pounds for a business, but it makes 4 million pounds a year. That feels a lot more sensible. Arithmetic that we can apply to valuation that makes sense in the entrepreneurial space. So an accountant might say, well, let's just look at the balance. By the way, all of this is in the training. It's all in the training videos. You can look at the balance sheet value, and you can see if you take the assets, you take the liabilities, take the assets, or take the liabilities off the assets, you know, what's the balance sheet value? You could say that is the value of the business. Have you seen my sofa example? You know, the sofa is a lovely Italian leather sofa. It was certainly lovely to me when I bought it, which is why I paid £3,000 for this sofa. And I put a photo of this sofa up on the screen, and I said, okay, I want you to write down what you would pay for this sofa. Now, some people, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, looked at this sofa and said, oh my goodness, Jonathan, I see you, amazing taste you have. This black leather really is going places. I'm joking when I say that, by the way. I would love a sofa like that, but I recognize that it's secondhand now. I'd pay like £2,500 for this sofa. And other people looked at this sofa and they said, Jonathan, that is like the worst sofa anyone could ever possibly imagine owning. I wouldn't pay you for that. In fact, if I was going to pay you something, it would be £100. So does the sofa is the same sofa. You're looking at the same sofa with the same information, but different people have different perceptions of value of that sofa. So the first part of this Venn diagram is deciding what you want. Now, then you've got to find out what the seller wants. And what the seller wants is you finding out what it is that they need. Now, when I decided to get rid of this sofa and change it for something just a little bit less 1980s, and I bought a second sofa, and the second sofa is sitting in plastic in the living room, and I can't even put the legs on it and put it up because I've got this black leather sofa over here, I would love to have gotten somewhere close to my money back on that sofa. Of course I would have done. It cost me £3,000. Well, having said that, that was a couple of years earlier. I've forgotten about it now. You know, the credit card was paid off. It doesn't feel like it. Yeah, it doesn't feel like I spent money on it now, but I'd like to get some money back. What if I could get £2,000? But now I've got the new sofa delivered. I need some space in my living room for the new sofa. And people often want space in their life for the new business, space in their life for the grandchildren, space in their life just to get rid of all of the stress of running a business, because every business has its ups and downs and its stress times. So you might start off wanting £2,500, but as time goes on, your flexibility around price starts to expand, and after a while you start thinking, well, actually, I'd be quite happy to accept £1,000 for the sofa. No one offers you £1,000 for the sofa. It's like, well, what will you give me? What will you give me? I'll tell you what I ended up doing with that sofa. I actually offered it to anyone who could take it away, free of charge, to anyone who could take it away that day and did not want me to help them down the stairs with it. Yeah, so I needed 2 people to come along and take the sofa and get rid of it. And the relief I felt having that space in my living room, which is the relief that business owners often feel when they get rid of the business. They've got the space in their lives, and now I could put the new sofa in there.
You're watching this video because you've got some level of interest in buying a business. That's great. Let's get you started. I've got something brand new. It's free of charge. It's called the Business Buying Toolkit, and there's a link to get it in the video description below.
What the owner wants is a whole different discussion to the mental discussion you have about what you want. Now, the next part of this Venn diagram is going to be what you can finance. Because if you can't finance it, you can't have it. So, for example, beautiful house, gated property, and the last number I heard that house sell for was 15 million. So you could walk past that every day. I walk past it a few times a month. And I look at that house, it's a beautiful house, and I think most people would look at that and say, oh, what a great house. I'd love to have that house, even just for a fleeting moment. Oh, what a beautiful house. Look, check it out when you walk down the hill. So it's there for 15 million. Now, you could want it all day long, but unless you've got most probably a 2.5, 3 million pound deposit, the stamp duty is going to be horrendous, and a bit of legals as well. Unless you've got all that, plus you've got an income to support the repayment of maybe a 12 million pound mortgage, you can wish all day long, but you can't have it. So sometimes people say to me, I think even actually someone said to me today, if this business, I just can't see how we can get to the number that the seller wants. We just can't get the finance together to get the number the seller wants. So what would you do if it was a house? Well, I suppose you go, well, it's a bit out of my reach at the moment. The seller wants too much. I can't raise the mortgage. I'll just go and buy another house. Yeah, exactly. Just go and buy another business. Because you can want it all day long, but the seller might have unrealistic expectations, and you can't finance it. And if you can't finance it, then you can't buy it. So instead of asking yourself the question, which a lot of people start off asking themselves, which is, how can I afford this business? And I wouldn't say this necessarily applies to anyone here today, but if we were to go out into the general public and we would talk about buying a business, the first question people would say is, well, how would I afford it? I'd love to buy a business, but how can I afford it? You may have thought that at some point yourself, but that is the wrong question to ask yourself. The right question to ask yourself is, how can I finance it? How can I finance it? And if you can't finance it, if you can't get the mortgage and you haven't got the ability to get that mortgage, you haven't got the deposit, then you can't buy it. You go and buy something else. So you've got to always figure, what can you finance and how does that overlap with what the seller's expectations are, what your expectations are, and then the final part of the Venn diagram is a structure that works. Now, the structure that works best for the seller is always, I want all my money today. Now, if you were the seller, you'd all be thinking the same thing. You'd be saying, I want my money today. I want all the money. Who wouldn't want that? That is the very best outcome for you. Unless the seller's a little bit more entrepreneurial and thinks, yeah, the business is going to go up. I'd rather take a part of the future as well, because the future could actually be rosier than the present, especially with this new team running the business. But if the seller wants all the money up front and you can't do all the money up front, you don't want to do all the money up front, and you shouldn't do all the money up front because that is your protection, that is your insurance against the seller misrepresenting the business in some way, you can't do it. You've got to have a deal structure that fits in with the financing available, fits in with what the seller wants, and fits in with what you want. And then this bit in the middle, which is this bit here, if I just fill that in, that's the overlap of all of these things. And that is your deal.
I'm interrupting this video to tell you about my most amazing lawyer. His name is John Andrews. You need an outstanding lawyer to get your deal done, so why don't you use mine? His details are on the screen. When you reach heads of terms, send him a message and he'll be able to help you get the deal done.
So these are the 4 things that come together to create the deal. Now, this is why you've got to look at lots of deals to find one where all the pieces fall into place. Does that make sense? Because you're very unlikely, and I know people who have done this, but it's beginner's luck, who found that on their very first excursion out there looking at businesses. The first business they look at, oh my goodness, all the pieces fit together. It's a little bit like looking for a relationship. You've got certain criteria, if you like, and the other person has got certain criteria, and you're looking for an overlap of those criteria, which is sufficiently overlapped for you to sign the contract. If you combine these 4 circles, you've got the bit in the middle, that is when the magic happens. So that's what you're looking for. And if any of those fails, then you haven't got yourself the deal.